What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Eclectic Beard Reactions. This go around, we're going to look at Stephen Fry on American versus British comedy. Interested to see what he says about this. Now, before we go any further, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, if you would. Let's go ahead and get into it.
American sense of humour, and we haven't really touched, you haven't mentioned so much the British sense of humour, but do you think they differ hugely? And if so, what accounts for that difference?
It's a really good point. I think, it strikes at the heart of what is American optimism is a really important thing, but not only optimism, but a refusal to see oneself in a bad light, or, you know, one could talk about this for far too long, but if you go to an American bookshop, by far the biggest section is self-help and improvement.
He's not lying about that. He's not lying about that. Americans, we don't like to see ourselves in a bad light. We don't like other people picking on us, even though we pick on everybody else, which it's a wimpy way of doing things. It's called bullying. Just saying. But that's just standard MO of Americans. You go to like Books A Million or another bookstore like that, Barnes & Noble, he's right. One of the biggest sections will be your self-help books.
The idea that life is refinable and improvable, and that you can learn a technique for anything, whether it's lovemaking, being a businessman, a marriage, cooking, losing weight, whatever it is, there's an NLP way of doing it, there's an Anthony Robbins way of doing it, there's a things they didn't teach you at Harvard way of doing it. There's an unbelievable sense that life is improvable, that you can be lectured at, or indeed given a sermon at, you know, it's the Protestant base of America, that things are done by text and by works, as opposed to by submission and by, you know, a doctrine in the way that the higher church, you know, European, you know, rump, we still believe. And there is a sense of original sin in Europe. I mean, this is a bizarre theory that I won't push to its limit, but when it comes to comedy, it's satisfactorily, I think, obvious that the American comic hero is a wisecracker.
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna that he put it as like a doctrinal difference, almost like it's any reference to church, like Puritan and then the Church of England. That's an interesting take. That's not something you would expect whenever talking about comedy, because the influence of both. Yeah, but it makes sense, and this is one of those big brain moments, kind of, because it takes and it requires you to look past like just what's at the surface and go back deeper than that. And that's hella interesting. That's really interesting.
And there is a sense of original sin in Europe. I mean, this is a bizarre theory that I won't push to its limit, but when it comes to comedy, it's satisfactorily, I think, obvious that the American comic hero is a wisecracker who is above his material and who is above the idiots around him. And the British comic, put it this way, the American comic hero, like John Belushi or someone like that, you know that scene in Animal House where there's a fellow playing folk music on a guitar, and John Belushi picks up the guitar and destroys it. And the cinema loved it because he just smashes it and then waggles his eyebrows at the camera. Everyone says, God, he's so great. Well, a British comedian would want to play the folk singer. We want to play the failure. All the great British comic heroes are people who want life to be better and on whom life craps from a terrible height, and whose sense of dignity is constantly compromised by the world letting them down. They want to wear a tie. They're not quite smart enough to wear an old school tie because they're kind of lower middle class. They are Arthur Lowe in Dad's Army. They are Anthony Aloysius Hancock. They are Basil Fawlty. They are Del Boy. They are Blackadder. They're not quite the upper echelons, and they try to be decent and right. Everything tries to be proper. They're even David Brent from The Office. And their lack of dignity is embarrassing. They are a failure. They are an utter failure. They're brought up to expect empire and respect and decency and being able to wear a blazer in public, and everyone around them just goes Whereas the American hero is the smart talking, he's Jim Carrey and he's Ben Stiller and he's, whoever, he just goes all the way back. They can wisecrack their way out of any situation. They win the girl, they're smarter, they've got the biggest knob in the room. The British guy arrives at the room and says, oh my God, I've left my knob behind. I haven't even got one. And in a sense, comedy is the microcosm that allows us to examine the entire difference between our two cultures.
Holy shit. He hit that like straight on the head. Like that's... Thinking of it, watching American comedy and stuff like that. Now you've got like TV shows and stuff like that where the comedian, plays the obvious, like straight up, but they still wind up on top in the end 9 times out of 10. That or they play the dad that is kind of goofy, but still gets over on, whether it be his wife, kids, or whoever else, and he's still well liked. Where in other TV, like watching like Only Fools and Horses, Del Boy definitely has issues. He definitely has issues with everything and everybody, and he has to fight and scrap. But the intimate, but the moments that are funny, like, is in those failures and stuff like that. Whereas in American comedy, like, he's hit this. This is an awesome breakdown on the differences between American and British comedy. And I think that might be subconsciously one of the reasons why I like watching British comedy so much, whether it be Fawlty Towers, whether it be Only Fools and Horses, Bottom, or anything like that, is because they don't seem above you. They really don't. Like, you see them struggle, but it's the funny moments within the struggle itself, because everybody does it. And, like, they don't seem to... That's... Holy shit, yo. Holy shit.
Ours is bathed in failure, but we make a glory of our failure. We celebrate it. We love the fact that every great British comic hero can go into a dictionary. He's a bit of a Basil Fawlty. He's a bit of a Captain Mannering. He's a bit of a Steptoe. He's a bit of a Baldrick. He's a bit of a Blackadder. He's a bit of a this. They're characters that we recognise, all of them so flawed as to be an utter disaster. But you can't do that with American comedy. You can't say he's a bit of, who's that chap in Friends, or he's a bit of a, it doesn't really work. They're not characters at all. They're just brilliant repositories of fantastic killer one-liners.
Wow. Wow. That might be... That was fantastic. That was absolutely fantastic. Just spot on. There's no two ways to put it. That was so spot on, it's not even funny. As an awesome breakdown on the differences, because he went more historical and like at the psychological levels, and that's how you take and reach people. Well, number one, not the historical level, but the history behind, with the two differences, because Protestant and then the church, and that was, the reason given for people coming over here, the Puritans, is, oh, they want religious freedom. Of course, they had companies backing them to make money, but I digress. And over there, you had the Church of England. So, to escape, under the auspices of the Church of England, go over to America, religious freedom, even though they didn't really have religious freedom. And then also the differences between American comedians and British comedians, where American comedians, you see them on screen, he's right, one-liners, they can talk their way out of anything or goof their way out of anything, and they're always either above the people that are around them, or they're able to come out on top of the people that are around them. Whereas in British comedy, it's the glory of the failures, or it's the, for me, it's almost, that's a perfect description, because watching the comedies from over there, like, they're not, the comedians that he referenced, they're not above and beyond everybody that's on screen with him. He's sharing in their failures. He's sharing in their struggles. But the way that it's done, and the writing, and the emotion is conveyed, and the way that the comedic timing is, you see the struggle, but the way everything is done, he's just a normal person. It makes that, dude. That's wow. Holy shit. Leave it to Stephen Fry. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves. Peace.